problem, you cannot function very well. And that is what actually put us to be looking at what can we do in terms of looking at health condition. And I remember that when I was in the university many years ago, one of our friends lost his mother due to cancer. So since then, finding solution for cancer has resonated in my brain. So one of the things that our research group is well known for is finding cure for cancer. And to the glory of God, I'm going to show that maybe towards the end, we are now at the clinical trial stage with one of our partnership in Japan. In fact, they've started that in 2 universities in Japan. They've started the clinical trial, and by the grace of God, this year we are starting our own in South Africa based on it. So what we use this material to do is we locate where the problem is, which we call imaging or diagnostic, and then now we have grown to the point of using the same material to cure that. And because of time, I will not present that. We also did a lot of work on coronavirus when it came, and currently now we are doing something so fantastic together with the German and some group in Nigeria, whereby we have been able to find a material that is 98.9 potent to the spike protein. So what we are doing now, we are in the stage of turning it into drug, because we know many people don't like the injection. So it may not be very common here. The coronavirus is still causing a lot of damages, even with us in South Africa. So now, when your health is good, how do you maintain the health? You need to eat good food. And that's why I'm going to talk about food. Because an hungry man is an angry man. So, and when you don't eat, you can't maintain your health. So we use this material to see how can we make our agricultural products to be potent. Like, as we can see here, this is the sweet potato that, as we didn't use any nanomaterial, but when you use the nanomaterial, you improve the yield, you improve the resistivity of this material to the bacteria, the pesticide, and syntheticide. And of course, how can we do this without having a clean water? It becomes a problem. And that is why I'm going to talk lastly about water and look at their security. So let's go. So this will be the outline of my talk. So first, I would like to introduce you shortly to what is nanomaterial. So what are nanomaterial? According to the classification that we come up with 30 years ago, is that any material that have dimension, 1 dimension out of the 3 less than 100 nanometer. So if there is any dimension out of the 3 dimension that's less than 100 nanometer, then that material is qualified to be called nano material. So what makes them to be unique is that when you compare them to the bulk material, the one that has no confinement in all the 3 dimensions, is that they possess unique optical, chemical, electronic, magnetic property. And that is attributed to 2 things, which are large surface to volume ratio and the reduced dimension related to electronic radius, which we in material word called quantum confinement. So based on that, there are all the material in the world, we classify them into 4, which are bulk material. That is, there is no confinement in any of the direction. So we say it is 3-dimensional. And then once there is confinement in 1 dimension, we call it 2-dimensional material. And those are what we refer to as thin film. And those thin film, they are what they use in making light-emitting diodes. All these, our new phones now, they are products coming from this thin film material. And when you begin to go down and you confine them in 2 dimensions, then we call them 1-dimensional material. And those are what we refer to as nanowire and nanorod. And then finally, which is where I'm going to be most of the talk today, is when there is confinement in all the dimensions, then we call it 0-dimensional material, which people call nanoparticles. But if it is semiconductor, we refer to it as quantum dots. And because of this material have a lot of names. I always said what you see is what you get. You go to the textbook, you see nano 3, nano crystal, nano particle, nano bed. It depends on the architecture. And because of that, if you can look at this map, there is no area in the world today that you cannot apply nanomaterial. And that shows you how efficient this material could be, running from textile to biomedical, healthcare, food, agriculture, industrial, electronic, environment, renewable energy, and these are things, including food packaging, that you can use nanomaterials to do. So now let's look at how do we prepare this nanomaterial and their characterization before we go to the application? So what are quantum dots? If I define these 15 years ago, I will say it is semiconductor nanomaterial with size less than 10 nanometer. But what's the definition for today? It is semiconductor material and carbon material, because 15 years ago we come up with the advent of carbon quantum dots, which is not a semiconductor, that has size that is less than 10 nanometer. So why are we interested in this? Our interest in this is because, one, we want to solve environmental problem. And if you are going to use any material from the earth aspect, which is most potent for us, that material must be environmentally biocompatible. So we start looking at, okay, what can we do? So we now look at advantage of this material compared to the organic dye that people use for the bioimaging and diagnostic in those days. And we discovered that this material have size-dependent emission wavelength. I'm going to explain that in the course. In simple way, it's just that one material, the same material, can give you different size, and that different size will need different wavelength. So you can use it for different, one single material can be used for different application based on its size. Then he has what is called broad and continuous absorption spectrum, and then good and photochemical stability. So how do we prepare this material? There are so many methods for preparing this material. I mean, when we are teaching the undergraduate and the honor student, we say you have top down, bottom up, and template. But all of these, we have come up with a method which is known as wet chemical synthesis. And it can be divided into three, which are water phase, which means the material must be dispersible in water. Organic phase, the material must be dispersible in organic solvent. And then we have the two-phase. Two-phase means if you prepare the material that is water dispersible, but you need a product in organic, you can change it. All these things now become so simple in this year, in the century that we are now. But about 15 years ago, it was a problem. But now, it's no more a problem. In fact, some of these things now, we've introduced it to the secondary school students, that they can be able to do some of these things, because we need a lot of material. So out of these three, the most important one for us is the water phase, because it is simple, it's cost effective, it involves the use of water, so you don't need to use harmful organic solvents. In fact, some organic solvents that we thought they are not harmful, they are harmful to some people. Because I still remember those days when we are in the lab, I've got a student that ordinary ethanol is a problem for. The moment this student inhale it, 3 days, the student will not be able to come to the lab. So those are the things we are looking into, that how can we avoid such type of material to keep the environment clean. And for some of us who follow the Nobel rate, we know that in 2023, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry was given to the discovery of quantum dots by these professors. And for the sake of the student, these people are still alive. I still spoke with Professor Biwendi 2 years ago in US. So people that won Nobel Prize, they are not dead people. They are people that are still alive and active in research. So now, let me now slow down to this material called tellurium-based quantum dots. Our group has done a lot of work on different quantum dots. We have the sulfur-based, we have the selenium-based, and we have the tellurium-based. But 15 years ago, this tellurium-based happened to be the one that, because the major challenge then was that when you prepare a material during the advent of quantum dot over 2 decades ago, the material is always prepared in organic. Then you need to transfer it into water soluble, because you have to put it in the body and you don't want it to have it. So by the time they do what is called surface exchange, you discover that the material lose 95% of the properties. So now, in trying to find what material could be the best, that's when we discover that if you prepare tellurium base, whether it is the water soluble tellurium base directly, have the same property as the organic base. And not only that, this tellurium base, because in the biological application, you actually looking at the second infrared window. We are looking at anything above 600, between 600 and 1200, so that when we get into the body, all the other molecules in the body will not affect it. I'm trying to put it in a language that people could understand. So because of that, we major our work on this. And it's actually very simple to prepare. just get the tellurium precursor, add it to the metal ligand solution, and then you grow the material. But now that is where actually the problem was then. So if you look at it, the challenge is that the first material that was used was called hydrogen telluride. For those in inorganic chemistry, because I'm a professor of inorganic nanotechnology, hydrogen telluride is very poisonous. It's a very poisonous gas. But this gas is poisonous, it can produce something good. So what do people do? They pass it through the gas. And so now, how do you now maintain the amount that you release? And when you are talking about the large scale synthesis, so those are the problem. And then the next material was sodium hydrogen telluride. The challenge with that is that it's not stable. The moment you prepare it now, you need the presence of an inert atmosphere. Then when you begin to consider, to prepare this material, maybe you only need 0.5 mil. And then you prepare like 50 mil. So what happened to the remaining 49.5? You throw them away. So in order to solve that problem, a group in 2008, they proposed the use of sodium telluride and borate citrate acid. But there is a challenge. That citrate is also causing problem. The borate citrate is a big problem. Then another group came in 2010, and they were talking about what if we use glutathione and then some kind of cadmium. And when you look at that ratio, 120,000 to 1 of atrazine, nobody wants atrazine in biological material. It becomes a problem. Until when another group came in 2012, and they tried to solve the problem by using potassium telluride and TGA. So they were able to produce the first water-soluble material that can flourish in the near infrared, but it took them 13 hours. And based on our own experience, being in the field for several years, and just simple knowledge of the biochemistry, that if you look at the tripeptide like glutathione, you can actually make 3 peptides from there. We just decided to go and use that, and we have the best breakthrough that we can produce that material within 3 hours. So from 13 hours, we came in with 3 hours, and this is the setup for the material. So now, let me now be moving on how we have benefited. So this is the characterization that we did. We can see after 3 hours. So this is what I mean by size dependent. The one that is flourishing in the green is the smallest. It's about 1 nanometer. By the time it gets here, it becomes 1.5. By the time it's in orange, it becomes like 2.5. But by the time it's red, it's about 3 nanometers. And that's what we need, because we want something that can flourish in the red region so that we can be able to identify the cells that are in the body. And this is the microscope that I talk about. This is about 3.5 nanometers. So now, we're now telling ourselves, what test can we do? 3 hours is too much. Can we reduce the time? And then we look at band engineering. In this case, we decided to look at the effect of pH. And by the time we did that, we discovered that at pH 12, we can produce this material within 1 hour. We can produce the material that can flourish in the red. We are very excited. And then our application. Then we move from the excited state back to the ground state. Because by the time we apply this material, it destroys all the cells. Number 2, the material was not stable. And that is what this is all about. You can see this is pH 9, 10, 11, 12, 30 days, the thing quench. So we decided now to use our knowledge again. We do what is called core share. So now we solve the problem of stability. The material was stable for more than 2 years. But at the 11th month, we took the material to Japan to go and test it on some cancer cell that was developed to have the same lymph node like human being. And I tell you, we are excited going. We came back to the ground zero, because as you can see, everything died. So which means we can use it. So what we now did was now to develop how can we make this material better. And one of the things we did now was to bring in one of the amino acid and then bring a material that is not toxic, and then we are able to get the breakthrough. The material was not that very toxic. And this is some of the material that we have done. So from there now, we now decided to eliminate some of the material that we think is very toxic, and using a new material called gelatin, we got our big breakthrough. That we can produce a material that can be used without having any toxicity. And you can see here, the material is very, very stable, up to 14 months. But now, I want us to look at this very well, because this is what shifts the direction of our research. At 100, we can still boast that the material looks so good, But at 1,000 microgram per mil, it becomes a problem. But we start asking ourselves because I remember there was a company in France who said, no, you only need 100 microgram per mil. Don't bother about that. But we start asking ourselves, what if this material accumulates in the body and gets to 100 microgram per mil? What's going to happen? It means they'll be very toxic. And also, I could still remember that in those days when we travel, we go to Europe, we go to US, people will clap for you because, especially when they see this, they, wow, you mean this material cannot be toxic, but people still ask, but it's still cadmium. And we know the problem of cadmium, especially for people in Japan. We know how cadmium nearly kill everybody over there. So that actually now leads us to a new set of material entirely. Of course, people still use this thing for energy. That's why I didn't talk about the energy aspect. So now, these are the new set of material that we are using, which we call ternary or quaternary quantum dots. This material has been in the system, but no one has been using them for biological application because they are very difficult to prepare. But what I can just say here is that, because I want to go to application, that in our group, we have been able to produce this material using household pressure cooker, the one everybody used to cook rice. That's what we are using. And we have extended it. And so I presented this work in 2016 in US at Material Research Conference. And the editor of that journal just called me and said, please don't publish this work, send it to us. And so we send it to them, and so they become the first people to publish the work. Because these are the exploits. We use the work to solve some of the problem that method have, which is blue shift, which I don't really want to talk about for the sake of other people here. This shows that the material is still very small, but this is what looks very amazing. You can see this at 1,000 microgram per mil. This is normal kidney, no toxicity. And this is the HeLa cell, which is cervical cancer cell line, no toxicity. So which means now we can use the material as a drug carrier in the body to go and solve the problem. So from there, like I've been introduced, I'm a chemist, so we started looking at what are the other material that we can do. This is also another one breakthrough job that it was our group that first reported the synthesis of this material. So what we now decide to do now is we are now streaming down our brain to the cancer now. Now one of the things that is overexpressed is folic acid. If you conjugate this material, are we still going to have the same thing? Then we are able to prove so, that yes, we can still make the material, and the material can be non-toxic both to the HeLa cell and the lung cancer cell. So the next thing that we did is that how do we control this material? We want to put them into a vessel, which we call polymer, and then start releasing them little by little. Will that affect their stability? So we've proved that this dot here, they are the one in the material. And so how do we know that they've occupied the material? In characterization, that is what we call porosity. So we could see that we have reduced the porosity of the material. And of course, we test the toxicity of the material. Like I said, because we are going to be applying them in real life. So we need to be sure that those material are not going to be toxic. So this is also another material that we did. Just for the interest sake, that there is a collaborator in India who wants to use this material for energy application and requested us to produce the material in one-dimensional, and that is why we did this work. And of course, like I said, that the definition today is both semiconductor and carbon dot. So we ventured to look at how can we make this material better, because when carbon dot came, you can't use it for biological application in the near infrared. And something very important about this, which I'm going to show us as I'm towards the end of my slide, is that this material can generate a lot of heat, and that heat is needed to destroy the cancer cell. So that is what makes us to venture into this type of research. And then we can see we produce it in the red, and we're able to generate heat that is above 70 degrees Celsius. And any cancer cell can only withstand 45. By the time the heat gets to 46, it destroys the cancer cell. So now another material that we have used, apart from the quantum dot, is silver and gold material. And the reason is because we know that when you talk of antibacterial, you talk about silver. So what is our contribution here is that everybody was preparing this material using toxic material. So we became the first group to come up with completely green synthesis of this material. So what do? Simple chemistry. We take maltose, break down into glucose, and then we bring in gelatin that everybody eat, and then we match the two together, and then we put in the silver, and then we are able to produce this material that is very, very small. Then from there we start attaching it to different type of biomolecule, and one of them is starch that we have used there. So what are the advantage of this? We started by using it to sense some of the environmental pollutants. In this case, that is hydrogen peroxide. This work is a work between South Africa, France, and India. And so in order to make this material more potent, because we want them to convert for the catalytic processes from nitrophenol, which is very toxic, to a material that is not toxic, we decided to place it on the multi-wall carbon nanotube. Now, as I'm going towards the application, this is very important. This material is very invasive. It was a problem. And I remember a professor just walked up to my office in 2010 and said, "Young man, can you help us? There is this plant growing up in whole area. Is there anything you can do with nanomaterial?" Then we quickly went into literature and discovered that this material, called water hyacinth, has a lot of cellulose. So what do? We went there, harvested the whole material, and start using it to prepare nanomaterial. So from something that is very bad to something that is very good. And this is one of the work that we published here. And then we use the material now. We can use microwave synthesis. And since we work on cancer, and we know that platinum has a lot of anti-cancer activity, so we use the material to prepare platinum nanoparticle. That work, when it was published and analyzed, makes the people they call traditional earth practitioner to look for me and say, "We have so many plants in the country. Can you make use of them?" So what we've started doing now is, you just tell us what is the potent of those material. Is it an analgesic? Is it anti-cancer material? So they give it to us, and then we work on them and turn it into a good material. And these are some of the things that we have done here. Here, if you take this material now, if you have pain, so we did this in vivo, we use animal to test this and see that by the time you use butu plant and you produce silver nanoparticle, you should using butu plant, the analgesic property increase dramatically, and you only need only small amount of the material. So these are just other plants in South Africa that we are used, and this one currently now we have even moved further to the point of producing endophytic bacteria from the plant that are very useful for human body. So let me now end this by looking at how have we applied this in nature. Now, let's start with water. I know that when I talk about water, if you look at this map, don't forget this is Nigeria, this is Ghana. What we have, according to the scientists, is that we have economic water scarcity. But in South Africa, we have physical water scarcity. And the reason being that if you look at this map, 97% of our water, they are salt water. 97% of the water in the world is salt water. Only 1% is what all of us are using. So we see that there is a big problem. But we have a lot in Africa, but we are not making use of it. That's why they classify us as economic scarcity. But I can tell you, in Johannesburg, we get our water from another country, neighboring country. So we don't have water. In fact, now everybody is very happy it's raining. 6 years ago, they announced on radio, don't shower, use buckets. And if you get more than, I think, 5 liters, because they send you the bill, they charge you more. So the more water you use, the more money you pay, because we don't have water. And where everybody wants to go to Cape Town, I remember there was one time I was working in Cape Town, and every month they will charge us for water, apart from the normal charges. Because once you above that, because like I said, we have physical water scarcity. So that makes us to look at how can we use nanomaterial to solve this particular problem. So I'm going to look at 3 scenarios very quickly. The first one was, we know we have a lot of industry around us. Can we purify those dyes? So the first thing that we did in my lab is that we use this material, and within 2 minutes, we can clear up a water that is filled with dyes. And that work now, we've patented it, and we want to commercialize it. So, and this is what happened. You can see, this is the water with the methylene blue, the dye. By the time we add the nano material, and then we filter, and then you have your clean water. So when the university saw this, immediately the people start calling us. There is a river very close to us. What can you do? That is what we did. So we went to go and collect the river water. Because like I said, our research that couldn't solve societal problem doesn't make any sense. So whatever we think we are doing, we must be putting it at the back of our mind. The people that are supplying the money, how can they gain? I still remember that sometimes when I went home and I still saw some of my big cousin, when they said you are doing nanotechnology, they said, what are you talking about? Tell us something that we can relate with. So when I start breaking it down, at least I talk and say, okay, bring this water, add this to it. If I put this material there, you see now that it becomes clean. Then they understand what I'm talking about. So this is what we did now. If you look at this now, we move from methylene blue, then we now have rhodamine. So this is for the normal laboratory water. So we discovered that, with methylene blue, very good, 1 microgram per ml. But with rhodamine 6G, another cationic dye, that one is very stubborn. Then we now move to another material. Here, we've already made the material to be magnetic. And I'm going to talk about the reason for that towards the end of my talk. Because this material, like I said, we can use them for many purposes. But the major purpose is not for the water, it's to cure cancer. We only just decide to go and say, okay, if this material can be magnetic, can we use magnet to attract all the depth away? So that is when we make the material magnetic, we discover that the magnetic one is far better than the non-magnetic one. But yet we are still unable to clean water. So now, this is now the river water. That one is very stubborn because there are a lot of contaminants that are present there. So even when we use the magnetic material, now what we now did here was that to now increase the amount of the material from 1 microgram to 4 microgram per ml. Still very, very tiny. And then we are able to purify this river water. So as I'm talking to you now, together with the people in engineering, they are trying to construct something for us. How can we take the material there and find a way of helping them to provide that water using this? So that is some of the things that we have done. Another one that we have done, like I was telling you, is that in South Africa we have a lot of salt water. That was what we have in mind. I think the government then, they gave me a lot of money, some millions, to do this research. And the purpose was to, how can we convert the salty water into a drinkable water? So in the process of doing that, we discovered that we can actually do a lot. So we are able to produce a membrane, and that work took about 3 years. We are able to produce a membrane that when you put that membrane in a water contaminated by oil, that membrane takes the oil. By the time you put that membrane back, the oil will not go back into that water. It stays with the membrane. And from there now in the laboratory, we decided to create a pipeline. And that is why we can't work without the engineer. This work now, the engineering people, they are about to finish it. The problem we had then was human problem, because we decided to work with a water company. And we thought they are our friend. We submitted the material to the guy. And the guy went behind my back to go and speak to my student, asking them for the components of the material. And till tomorrow, no result, nothing. But the guy is insisting that he wants more material. But where are the results? No results. And that is what makes this work to go down. So because what we have been able to do by using membrane distillation, we can convert a salty water into a good drinkable water. When we did that in the laboratory, we have like 99.9%. And now that we are going to start on the large scale, we will see what and what modification that we can do. I think I have a small video here that you can just watch. It's less than a minute. Now, if you look at here, this is the ordinary water, and that is an oil. We are going to contaminate that water with the oil now. So the thing was not the whole solution now is oily. And then now we now bring in that membrane. And that is just a piece of that membrane is what we are bringing now. So the moment we put it there, everything becomes stable on that membrane. We call it super hydrophobic membrane. And then the whole water is clean all over again. And then one can be able to use it, especially for people in the village. They can use it for other domestic usage. So another thing that we did on water is, can we also use this material to selectively be taking all the heavy metals away from the water because of the pollution from the nearby industry. One of the ones that I'm presenting here is on chromium 3. So what we did was that first of all we discovered that by the time we tried to use this as a sensor, these are different metals on the periodic table. We discovered that this material works with chromium. But is it really real? So we decided to bring something called masking agent. Masking agent is if the material did not respond, by the time you ask masking agent, it's supposed to respond. So we discovered that everything goes back except for chromium. So and that is what we see here, that chromium still neutralizes the water. So and then we compare what we have done with the literature, and we discovered that within 120 seconds we can actually sense the amount of chromium that is present in the water up to 0.5 nanometer. And then we now try to look for the people who understand chemistry, know that we have chromium 3, chromium 6. Can they distinguish between the two? We can see that here the chromium 6 is still showing the light, whereas the chromium 3 is not giving anything. So the material is very selective, and then we explain what is the reason behind the selectivity of those membranes. Let me quickly go to the food. So what have we used the material to do in terms of food? Now, I remember that growing up many years, it's only old people who knows what you call obronsis. You give that to pregnant women. You say you are supplementing the amount of iron that is present in their body when they are pregnant. Now, I just discovered that one day people are going to the local market and everybody is buying potato. Then I asked, why is everybody buying potato? So they said it gives them a lot of iron. And I called one of my postdocs. I said, look, let's find out. Does this potato really have the amount of iron that is needed? And our aim is that I was telling the student, I said, we are going to enter into trouble. Because our end product is we want to develop a sensor. So that when people go to that market, they pinch like a pregnant sensor. You just pinch your blood, you know whether you are pregnant or not. Like the glucometer. If you have high blood sugar level, once you pinch it, you can see. That's actually our end product. That's where we are going to. So we decided to do this, and I was not just telling the student that, if we can use a simple method to do this, instead of using this gigantic chemical equipment like ICP or EMS, we are going to solve a lot of environmental problems. So that is what we did here. I will not bother you with all the chemistry thing that we did to make sure that the material is very stable. Let me go to this. This is when you use ICP-MS, a very big material, and this is what we get. So we can see that there is a good correlation. So we can use this material to actually detect the amount of iron that is present in food. And then from there, immediately, the West African name come out, mercury. Because I know many of our places are polluted with mercury from battery, from bulb. So I said, can't we find a material, especially what I like most, fish? Because now everybody is dumping things in the river. So can we see whether the amount of mercury that is present in this river? So the next thing we did was to modify the material, bringing in sulfur, and then we used it to test the amount of mercury that were present there. Unfortunately, it was not a nice story. The amount of mercury there is not good. So I told them that nobody must go to that place and buy fish again. So now we are in the process of developing a sensor based on this by working with the engineer, so that when people go to the market, you can actually use that sensor to test the blood on the fish, and then you can see whether that fish contains a lot of mercury. So that you won't think you are enjoying nice fish, but at the same time you are destroying your body because you are taking in some heavy metal. Now, still talking about agriculture, another thing that we have done is that, if you know that in Africa, our problem is actually not food, our problem is storage. Because we produce a lot of food products, and by the time that season is going, all of them become wastage. So we have a professor in our university that is on post-harvest. So that professor walked up to me and said, can't we use your nanomaterial to solve this problem? I said, why not? We can solve some problem. So what we now decided to do, we started with tangerine, which is called mandarin there. So we take this, we prepare this nanomaterial using gum arabic, and all we did was we just wash those tangerine. We soak them in that solution, and after 1 hour, we remove it. And then we take the one that it was not present there, and then we start watching them for 4 months. What did we discover? The one we didn't put in that solution, after 1 month, started becoming rotten. Those that were not rotten, they've lost their moisture content. All of us, many of us know what I'm talking about. If you go and drink orange or tangerine, when the season is over, many of them, they've lost the water content. And then we throw them away. We say, this thing does not contain amount of water. What was happening is because the antioxidant enzyme has been degraded. So even what you are just eating, you're only eating sugar. No vitamin C that you claim that you are having after some time. So with this, we are able to solve that problem. Another, still talking on food. So there is another professor that is on agriculture. So we sat down and we were talking. That guy has over 100 acres of land given to him. So, and the man was like, you said this material can do some antibacterial. Have you done it? Have you tested them? We said, no. So it's okay, give us some. So they decided to bring in nematode. And then they now use this material, this silver nanomaterial that we prepare in our lab, they now use it as a nematicide. And then we discover that the one that has the silver nanoparticle were able to grow well. But those one, without it, they died. So those are the things. Now with that, they've been giving us, I think if I could remember, 4.5 million to go ahead and see how we can use that to grow more of the fruit, especially those ones that are easily attacked by the pesticide and the nematicides. So lastly, let me go to our head. So I'm going to talk about cancer. We know that cancer is a group of uncontrolled disease. I don't think there is anybody here that is family, whether first generation or third generation or second generation or third, has not been affected by cancer. And the sad thing is that the rate is becoming alarming now in Africa. Let me give us these statistics. I mean, all I can say here is I want to appeal to especially the Gen Z generation. Don't be spending your time on your computer. Do exercise. Because people don't do exercise now. This is what Health Organization research. The 5 leading procedures, they are lack of physical activities. And stop eating junks. You must eat good food. Ghana fufu is very good. I enjoyed it. Rather than eating all these burgers, KFC, all those things, they are the one causing a lot of cancer. And I can also want to advise you, please stop smoking. Smoking is very dangerous to your health, and drinking. You could see here, this is not me. This is what Health Organization saying tobacco use is the most important risk factor for cancer research. Okay, now, so look at this. This is where my interest comes in. Look at the incident. Africa doesn't have any problem. Look, Asia is about 48%. Africa is second to the last. We are cool. But look at the death rate. Problem starts. Look at Africa. It's increasing. Why? Because if you look at the conventional method, which is chemotherapy, radiotherapy, surgery, I don't know in Ghana. I know before I left Nigeria over 21 years ago, when somebody hears surgery, the person is already dead before the surgery takes place. It's already believed that death sentence has come. Not to now talk about, if you do the chemotherapy, I can tell you a lot of people have died of chemotherapy drug because those drugs are not friendly at all. Once they get to your body, they start destroying different type of cells. And that is the reason why, and on top of it, there will always be reoccurrence. When you start the treatment. So what are the new thing to do? This is the new technology now. The photodynamic, the photothermal, the immunotherapy, and the gene therapy. My group is involved in these two, and just last year, we already started looking at immunotherapy by one of our international collaborators. So why are we interested in the photodynamic therapy? It's very simple. It's less invasive. You don't need operation. In fact, with photodynamic therapy, there are some cancer, like the cancer of the skin, cancer of the eye, cancer of the teeth. It can be treated without going to anywhere, without any operation. And it just only involves the photosensitizer, the light of that is not toxic, and then the oxygen that is present in the body, the molecular oxygen. So with that three components, and this is the way it's being administered, you put in the photosensitizer, it goes to where the tumor is, you apply the light, the thing is destroyed. If that thing really worked very fast like that, everybody would have been very happy. But it's a little bit complicated, but we are solving the problem. So one of the material that is used is called porphyrin. I'm trying to rush so that now this porphyrin, the good thing about it is that if you put it in the body of somebody that has cancer, 75 to 80% of it go to where the cancer is. So that is why the scientist said he has the ability to localize in the tumor. And this material we generate by the time we shine light on it, what we kill the cancer. So that's why they call it prodrug. So it means when it's in the body, the cancer is thought I have a friend. But the moment you shine the light, the friend becomes the enemy and destroy the cancer cell. Now, what is the problem? The problem of this material is that, number one, the window where they use it is only for surface. It can't go deep down. When you are talking of things like breast cancer, lung cancer, it becomes a challenge. And then the phototoxicity means that they discover that when this material is applied and the patient is okay, after 3 days, and the patient is under sunlight, the material starts reacting again in the body. Then another problem that was there is the non-directional. Remember I said 75 to 80. The question is what happened to the remaining 20%? It means it goes to the normal cell and start destroying the normal cell. So it's like you said, come and help me. And when the person has finished his help now, it's now affecting you again. So those are the problems that now, how do we solve that? Can we make this material to just go directly to where the cancer is? And then lastly, since the material is not water soluble, what can we do? And that is what we have been doing for the past 20 years to try and see how we can solve this problem. And that's why I said the good news is that the clinical trial has started. We are going somewhere. And then the thing is we are trying to solve this problem. So let me just, scientifically, what have we done? 2 ways to solve the problem of non-directional. So that you introduce magnetic material. That's why I was talking about that material being magnetic. So what do we do? When you get to the hospital, they bring in magnetic field. If it's the breast cancer, once they bring the magnetic field towards the breast, everything. If you can still remember simple play we used to do in those days, when you bring a magnet with an iron, what happens? Everything moves. So once the material is magnetic, and you bring in magnetic field, put it in the area where the tumor is, everything migrates there. So that means nothing else will affect the normal body. And so another way to do that is to use what is called receptor mediator. That is things we call antibodies. So what we do is we take those material, conjugate them with the antibodies, and those antibodies, if it is the breast, it will never go to the skin. It will never go to the lung. It goes to where the breast is. And to solve the water soluble, we conjugated them to nanomaterial. This is one of the things, the breakthrough that we did by conjugating those material, and then we discovered that the material was soluble in water. Actually, it was this work that attracted that editor of Material Research Society in US and said, and then by the time they saw the result that we produced, which is here now, everybody knows that porphyrin can destroy cancer. But by the time we conjugate them to the quantum dot, the nanomaterial, we discovered that we increased the activities by 3 times, which is not what was expected. But that is what we showed there. So from there, we started receiving calls. This one was the work done in France. And as I'm talking to you now, the French people, they are so very magnanimous to us by the grace of God that they've given us access to their cancer institute to bring our material for them to test it on people who are about to die. So they said we shouldn't bother. They are about to die. So if the material work, good. If it doesn't work, we can do more work on that. So that one is a very good privilege for us because it means we have people we can be testing the material on until when we are able to get it working. Because one thing with this material is that it's one thing for them to work in a laboratory. It's another thing when they get to the human body because of the different components that the human body is made up from. What am I saying in a simple term? People who have pimples, you know, your friend tell you this thing works for his pimples. You use it, it doesn't work for you. But your friend is not lying. It's because of the composition of your body. So it's not like one size fits all. So there are some things, there are other things to need to consider. So this is one of the work we did on leukemia cell. This is one of the work we did on leukemia cell because I'm not sure more in Ghana. I know in Nigeria people have sickle cell anemia. And I have a lot of friends when we are in school then that when that pain starts, it becomes a problem. And I'm an expert in knowing what is happening. So I was actually interested when I received a call in France and said, can we test your material on leukemia? I said, why not? So we look at it, the material on the normal cell, no problem. Look at what happened with the leukemia cell. The material just destroyed the cell. And that now is what is another work that they are currently working on there. Can we package it into a drug that those people can use? So another one that we have done in-house is to look at the breast cancer because in Africa, there are two top cancer, breast, prostate, followed by lung. So looking at the breast cancer, so what we have done, what we have decided to do is to say, let's use the magnetic aspect to see if we can use this to destroy the breast cancer cell. Now, this is what I'm talking about the magnetism aspect. We can see this is the solution. Now you bring in magnet, what happens? You can see where it's concentrated. So that is what's supposed to happen when that patient is put under magnetic field. And so in the lab, it has worked. And this is, you can see here that this is the material without the magnet. When you put in the magnet, more of it goes into the breast cancer, and this is the solution that we have when we apply the heat to it. We are able to destroy 79% of those breast cancer cells. Now we have done a lot of improvement on it that we can destroy it 100%. And those are the things now that when we start our clinical trial, those are the material we are going to use. I talked about photothermal. Photothermal simply means just applying heat. So what are the things that we have done here is that this one is very easy, but the major challenge is the material used, which is gold nano rod. So that gold nano rod, by the time people prepare it, is very toxic. So what do? We want to reduce this toxicity and still make sure that the material is still good to generate high amount of heat. So in our lab, so this is the first thing that we did. We conjugate the material and then we use gelatin. This project started in 2012. There was a professor in Japan who said, can you solve this problem? He bought a gold nano rod. The gold nano rod gave them problem. They are not chemists. They are biomedical engineers. They have a lot of animals that they are using. And then I said, why not? We can try and solve the problem. And that's why at the beginning I said, I want to thank God for the idea. It looks so simple because we just said, okay, let's try and use gelatin to produce the material. And this thing now, it has become like as if one is drinking bread and tea in my lab. Anybody can produce it. It's so simple. So we produce this and this material. Now because there was one time they tell us that, oh, the laser that they are using to generate the heat is 40. They now have a laser of smaller wavelength. We said, don't worry, we are going to prepare the material. So we are able to prepare those materials. And now, with this now, we can see, we now start testing. This is our new material. We can see that it can generate heat, which is 42. By the time you have 25 to 42, it's 67. And you need 45 degrees Celsius. Now, so we test this with what people have done. This is the normal material, the gold itself. This is when you use spec, and this is when we use our material. And with this, another thing that we decided to test is by the time we use this material, can we reuse it again? So we discovered that the material still maintain its property after we have used it with the heat. And this is just for the cell work. You see, the material that we said is toxic is highly toxic. And this is our own material. And then finally now, we now apply it, we're able to destroy the cell. I'm not saying here that we have done this work we have done preclinical for this one. We have put it in animal. By the time we applied it, it burned everything. Then they now develop. That's why I'm talking to see, so that the engineer can see that we really need them. In Tohoku University, they now develop a system, a cooling system. So that when we apply this gold nano rod inside the tumor, there is a cooling system. So no matter the amount of heat, the skin of the animal will not burn. And so that's one also we have done. And this is a new work that now is on clinical trial, which we call by using lymphatic delivery to deliver the anti-cancer drug. So what are the things that we have done? You can see here with our material. This is the animal with the tumor. The tumor keeps growing. If you use gold nano rod alone without applying the heat, the tumor keeps growing. If you use the laser alone, the tumor keeps growing. But if you use the gold nano rod with that laser, you destroy the cancer cell. And now, because then we are having the challenge, how long will it take for our material to be approved by FDA? So our collaborators suggested that why shouldn't we take some of the current chemotherapy drug and see if we can reduce the amount by using this pathway? And that is what we are able to do by using some of them now. So instead of using something like 100 microgram per ml, with this pathway, they only need 1 microgram per ml, and then they become very effective. I just came back from Japan in November. They've tested it on 178 patients. Only one patient have some discomfort. The others is still working, and that's why we're about to start our own in South Africa. And I can assure you that once it's working, we are coming to Ghana. So this material now, one of the things I now ask one of the PhD students who come to my lab to do is, can we actually solve this problem of CTAP and find another material? And that is what we did here, and we are able to produce this material in liters. 5,000 liters, we do it for you. Very simple process. And now we also want to be sending this to China, because we have a collaborator there that said he needs this, but we are not telling them how we produce it. So even if you do this, you click it, I don't think you will get the results. But there is something we have removed here, so that you will not just go and, those people are very smart. So now, as I'm closing and rounding up, so still talking about the breast cancer. So what we have now done is that we are trying to look at for how long can the depth go. They said we need 15 millimeter, 1.5. But I'm reading now that 1.5 will not really do a lot of work. What can work is 2.5 centimeter, which is 25 millimeter. So, but here, we try to introduce an antibody to the gold nano rod and see how many heat can we generate. Here we use liver. So, and this is what we did. This is our material. We just compared our work with what people have reported, and this is where I'm going. You can see now that currently now, at 15 nanometer, we can be 50 millimeter, we can be able to generate a heat that is 38 plus 25, 53, and what we need is 45. So if the cancer cell is 1.5 away from the body, we can destroy it. But I can tell you that now we are working on how can we get to 50. And it's becoming very easier because those guys are very smart. Those engineers in those Japan are very smart. They're bringing up a probe that can actually go in depth and then deliver the material. The delivery we have not done. That is the work for this year that we are going to start. But they have developed the probe, and we are very excited when they came to see me in November, because we normally have a meeting where we discuss some of this work. And I asked them, have you tested the material? They said no. So that is the work they are going to do this year. And as I'm closing, let me just give you two more on how we have used this to show the cancer that is present in human being. So here is the material we prepare. And one thing that we need to know is that for every cancer, there is a bacteria responsible for it. So if you're able to destroy the bacteria, your chances of getting to that cancer cell is very high. So in this case, we are looking at the prostate cancer. I'm looking at prostatitis. So what we have done, this is normal pancreatic cell. It's not, this is the one from the animal, and this is the one from the human being. So what we have been able to show that this material can actually go there, and then once we apply the drug, it destroys the cancer. And then the last one is just to show you the major breakthrough on the skin cancer cell. So this work was done with people in Brazil and Australia. So this is what we did. We take our material, we prepare the material, and then we send it to them. And this is the breakthrough. We can see that this is the quantum dot. This is the drug. This drug is not soluble, but by the time you add the quantum dot to it, the conjugate was able to destroy. And then they try it on the animal. They put the material on top and shine the light, and it destroys. It is in the process that they discover that this material has antibacterial property. They said a professor just walked in while they were doing this and said, "Can you give me this material?" And then the professor went on to go and tell it on gram-negative bacteria. And the professor discovered that if you use this material on non-irradiated, that is, you don't shine any light. By the time you shine the light, you destroy. But if you use the conjugate, you don't need any light. Just apply, leave for 3 hours, you destroy the bacteria. And this is what just shows that it is not a fluke. If you don't have the bacteria keep growing. But if you have the material, you destroy the bacteria. And so, with that, what we are now doing, our current state of work is that we are now combining, we call it procedure. Tri-therapeutic. We are taking the photodynamic, the photothermal, and the magnetic. Because studies have shown that if you have a magnetic material and you introduce a magnetic field, that is what is called magnetic hyperthermal, which can also generate heat. So we are now trying to produce one material in 3 that can have those 3 properties. And the good news is that we've been able to produce that material. And I intentionally waited to make sure that we already have everything in place before we send this paper out. So now, we are actually, as I'm talking to you now, they are working on it in Brazil. And I'm sure that in the next 2 months, they give us what the result is, which we know that before is very promising. So, and the good thing we did here is that we didn't put the 3rd material here. So nobody knows the 3rd material. And that is the one that we are working on now with the animal. So we have just been able to show that this material can generate a lot of heat. It can generate singlet oxygen. It's very magnetic. And then when we conjugate it with our drug, we can be able to produce that. And so with that, I want to conclude by saying that Nano dots have significant role to play in making our world a better place, especially in earth, water, and food application and their security. However, it is in our hand to employ this material for the benefit of human race and our environment. And before I close, let me acknowledge the following people. Again, God Almighty, that I'm able to be here to present this. And of course, my wife, I'm sure she's praying wherever she is. And my host, with the Vice Chancellor of this university, and all my collaborators. I just pick each one from each continent that have contributed to the work. And then the Bible says, wine is for merry, food is for laughter, but money answereth all things. I must thank the people who supply us all the monies. I didn't bring anything than myself, my brain, and my God, and they provided the money. And these are the people actually that are doing the work. I mean, I'm just gallivanting around, sitting down. These are the people that are doing the work. I pass it to them. We discuss. These are some of the students in my lab, and this is our new lab. And just before I go, as a chemist, let me give you a joke. The optimist sees the glass half full. The pessimist sees the glass as half empty. How do you think we chemists sees it? We always see it as completely full. half in the liquid state and half in the vapor state. And with that, I want to thank you for listening, and God bless.
Thank you very much, Prof. Let's give it up for Prof. Let's give it up. Thank you very much, Prof, for such an enlightening presentation. I'm not coming from a science background, but today I've learned a lot. Somebody coming from the business and communication background, but today I've gotten a little interest in science. Not that I'm old, I would have gone back and go and start again. Thank you very much, Prof. It's now time for us to take your questions, suggestions, and then input. For us to be able to take a lot of questions, keep your questions short and brief. So it is now time. Don't feel shy. Anywhere you are, just raise your hand. I'll come there and then take your question. So our dear students from Sunyani Senior High School, you are also part of us. So any question, anything that you didn't understand, the floor is open now. Madam, let's hear from you, please.
Hello, dear Chairman, dear colleagues. I'd like to first of all thank Professor Oluwafemi for your very amazingly insightful, very expansive and inclusive presentation, because it includes both the visuals, technical, and the specific. And I'm very excited about that, because I'm not from the hardcore sciences, but your visuals provoked my curiosity. And my question may be considered quite peripheral, but it's still about Nano, because it was provoked by your initial images that you showed. My question is, how would sustainability within the context of nanoscience and technology help us collapse the binarisms and dichotomies that characterizes our technological context? You see, African technology is mainly about indigeneity and modding. So Nano falls within the modding, and we also have indigenous knowledge systems and technology. So oftentimes when we consider modern technology, we Africans are seen as consumers of technology. Because I see, when I listen to you and with regards to how Nano can purify water and encourage or enhance sustainable consumption even in the rural areas, is a very laudable thing. But my thinking is that, how do we translate this into indigenous knowledge systems, or integrate indigenous knowledge systems into this kind of idea in order to make it more sustainable, make rural people able to also use Nano in a way that makes them producers of technology and not just consumers? Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a very broad question, but I'm just going to use maybe one or two examples that it has already started. You know, I will give two. One, there is one in a village in Abeokuta, whereby they gather the village together, and you know the process of making clay. They now brought in some nanomaterial. One of them is titanium. They add it to their clay for them. So they make the clay. Now that the clay become more durable, they are exporting it. Another one is the production of lantern. So they taught them how to produce this lantern using all the locally made material. Because there are a lot of things, a lot of materials that one can use. In fact, I'm saying that if you look at the now, Africa will benefit. But you see, my challenge is that every Africa that I know now, they want to run away. So now the question is, if we are not careful, nobody knows that knowledge anymore. Most of the kids we have today, they don't know anything about it. And it's those who knows that can bring it, and then we can put science into it and make it more profitable. I was talking about the plan. That was actually what they did in South Africa. All those who call themselves tradition practitioners, they should be telling us what are the plants that they think. So what do? We go to the lab, we identify the compounds, we certify it, go back to them and tell them, okay, only take 2 spoons of this, put it to this one, and after 2 days, don't drink the water anymore. So, and those people started using those technology themselves. So it's a matter of the owner of the technology being ready to relate it, and then we, from the scientific point of view, we merge it together. So it is what I will not just be the consumer of things. I also remember that there is a friend of mine in India who said that in India, when they chew sugar cane, you throw it away. So they now went into a system whereby they gather the thing together, and they are now using it to make baskets, and they said, and that and so there is a lot of ways, especially when it comes to nanomaterial, that we can take our indigenous knowledge, add it to what we have, because my experience is that when you take your knowledge, if you think those people like you, I can tell you, I've been in this business for 25 years. Nobody likes anybody. Everybody wants what they are going to take. I've had a very bad experience whereby I won't mention the country. We take our product there, they discovered that it was working, and they said, okay, let's patent this material together. I think the guy was very smart in one way. He noticed that I'm very reluctant, because I'm asking myself, I brought material from Africa to this place, patent the material here. While I was waiting, the guy applied Jesus, Bible principle. Look for the Judas in my group, pay the Judas money. Tell the guy, we are going to give you stay, paper, money, and then the guy let out the secret. So everybody wants what will benefit them. Remember, don't forget it's a race. And that is why sometimes we don't discover that if you discover something in Africa, until when it is working for you, don't make it out. Because the moment you make it out, they trap it down. Because why? It's not coming from that side. And I can tell you, somebody in science, there are a lot of trials also that go on there that doesn't work. It's only that nobody talk. Everybody talk about the one that is more potent and the one that work. Let me also give you another bad experience that I have 3 years ago. I was talking about the work on the coronavirus. I was in a conference, and then when I finished presentation, the professor walked up to me from Nigeria, and he said, Prof, I like what you are doing. I don't know anything about nanomaterial, but we have this project. Is there any way you can help us? And I asked them to give me a presentation. Then I said, okay, give me those material. They are plants. Let me take them and work on them. I did the work. We brought the material back, 99.8% on spike protein. And this is what people sell in the market, local market. Now, we involve because it's a consortium of about 6 countries. Then we involve the partner in Europe. The guy was very excited. He said, let's test it scientifically with them too. He sent the material. The day the material was sent, the guy sent an email. What is the component of the material? So the other person came to me and said, Prof, they asked me. I said, tell him A, B, and C. So the guy said, no, he wants the real component. Who is so stupid to tell you the real component? So that when he got in there, you match things together. Because we didn't do that, you know what happened to that material? It get lost. They said they couldn't find it. We sent another one. The guy said the material didn't work. Then because there is a lot of funding, so I suggested to the professor to say, I will pay for the student to go there. Let's send the student there. Let them train the student. But I want the students, say, when you get in there, in fact, I don't need to warn you. You also didn't know what I did. Just said A, B, and C. The student went there within 2 weeks. The same professor wrote and said the thing is working. And that it's not only working for coronavirus, it's very highly potent for HIV. So what am I trying to say? But the root point of this material is indigenous knowledge. That's where we started the work. So these are the things that we really need to put into consideration when we are talking about the science. That whatever knowledge we have, we bring it. Even in construction, I'm still wondering that I always ask myself that those houses built with clay, when it is very sunny, they look very cool and things like that. Can't we add in the technological aspect into it and make it into a durable one? Because some of the problems we are having now, they don't have it today. So that will be my suggestion on that we just need to bring in the indigenous knowledge, merge it with the scientific knowledge, and hold technology ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. All right, we have 2 questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Prof. I think I enjoyed your presentation. Some few areas I would want to seek clarification on. Would the usage of membrane to absorb the oil and generalizing that is wholesome for usage for domestic activities? My question is, did you go further to look at the other properties of water, like turbidity, and then the other properties before generalizing? Then, critically looking at the tables that you presented, if I'm to use parametric test, I can say that there are no significant difference in the tables and the graphs that you presented. But if you had gone further to use non-parametric tests, at least a 0.005 or 1 could show that there's significant difference in the treatments that you meted out. So I want to know if you apply in the next stage that you go, don't only use the parametric test, but non-parametric tests like the Friedman test and then Bonferroni, it will give an in-depth significance in the presentations that you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think on the water, we did all the other parameter tests. Once we finish that, we want to know, has the water lost all its property? Because it's not just only taking that away. So that one was done. And that is why we said we were now talking about the domestic use, because there is still more going on. Because we still keep the water to see what is going to happen after 1 year, 6 months, what happened to it. Because I remember that in Nigeria, I think it was in 1997, there was a company called that is the first water product in Ibadan then, true to Lagos. What wrecked that company was the fact that one of the water they produce, some people sell it, and then it starts having reoccurrence. Why? Because those water, they realized that after 6 months, there was a problem. So, and they didn't, because you cannot just do and then put it out for human consumption. So that's one we did. But on the other one, we put that into consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that insightful presentation. In fact, I'm not a chemical scientist, but I've really enjoyed the lecture. I think your presentation is timely because Ghana is actually having, should I say, a canker that is eating some of us up. That is the illegal mining. And I happen to come from one of those places. Prof, our water bodies, I wouldn't say it's total pollution, I wouldn't say it's pollution, but contamination, as I would put it. And I think it's due to some of these heavy metals like mercury. But I don't know if, apart from mercury, there are other. Sorry. I don't know if, apart from mercury, there are other heavy metals that comes with the mining, because things are so serious that even at those places, I come from Konongo, a place around, you don't know there, so it's like even the air that they breathe is contaminated due to these illegal mining activities. I want to know how this technology can be adopted to be able to help us solve this issue. If there's any way you can think of. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I can tell you that, like I said, that when I was giving that presentation, we have somebody called Saki Chia in water. They do a lot of those. How to purify the water. So what I've just tried to do is to bring one of what we have done. We have looked at arsenic, we have looked at chromium, we have looked at zinc, we have looked at cadmium, but we have some different groups in South Africa that actually majored on this. And I'm sure that by the time we start the collaboration, it's very easy to solve that kind of a problem, because those are the problems that we are also facing over there, and the purpose is to see how we can use this nanomaterial to solve some of these problems. So it's not only in detecting those heavy metal alone, because like one of the questions we're also asking ourselves is, okay, what's the end product? Even when we take this membrane, you take them out, and then they were able to identify these heavy metal. How do we make sure that the final product again now is not going back into the water body? So there are some other groups that actually work on that, and by working together, I'm sure that we'll be able to solve that problem that I can actually introduce you to, that is their major.
Last two questions. The last question should be from a student. So, Sunyani Senior High School.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. I'm from the business school, so I have a lot of interest in moving nanotechnology from the lab to the markets, so that at least we can make some money. You've elaborated a lot on the human factor. Are there any other challenges hindering the movement of nanotechnology from the lab to commercialization? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the one that is the most difficult is the earth problem. To take something from the lab to the market, it has to pass through different stages of approval. So that is why it normally takes a longer time. And that is why I was talking about that hospital in France, who said that, okay, they have the technology that can actually generate that heat from our material. These people, they are going to die. If it works, fine. It's like we are working from the end product back to the basis to see. And because when those people die, you know, the way they do their own thing is different from us. Many of them are even donated their organs. So they can start actually looking at what is the effect of those materials on that. So that's the major challenge when it comes to something that has to do with human body. But when we are looking at something like energy, like water, those ones are a little bit much more easier compared to when we are talking about the earth. So, like, let me take simple now, we are talking about commercialization. That's what I talk about mandarin. That professor just got a lot of big grants. From who? Companies. So the company now are now transporting their food to other countries without food getting spoiled. So that increased their product, because now all the products that need to be thrown away, they can be able to preserve it. Now, we also talk about like water material that we are talking about. We moved from tier in our university now. we are in the next stage now, trying to consult the company that will take it up. And from there, they've already draw some particular percentage that draws money. Another one that we have been introduced to is patenting. Even though it's very expensive, but if the material eventually get the breakthrough, the university has something to work with. But one thing that in the last 4 years that our university has started is that, because we know that when it comes to patenting, the moment you publish the work, the patenting is a problem. So what they've come up with is, if you have something that can solve environmental problem, we don't want to care about whether you have published it. Can it be designed from small quantity to bigger quantity that people could be benefit people? And that's another route that we are going in terms of business aspects. So once we do that, then they can speak to the partner who we want to join, like the one that I told you about, the lantern, the LED lantern. That LED lantern, I think now they are selling it for $1. So what they did in that village, because I'm a part of the group called African Resonance Institute of Science and Technology. So what they did, in that village, they asked them how much money do they spend on kerosene, the paraffin, on lantern. And by the time they put it in a month, they discovered that that village spent about $40. So with this lantern, in a month, they only need $5. So what did they say? They said they can't give them for free. Go to the bank. So those people went to the bank borrowed their money, and everybody buy it. And now they're able to produce it for themselves, and then they can export. So it's a matter of thinking, because the way we scientists think is different from the way business people think. And until when we come together, that is when we can, because there are some scientists today that cannot even write business proposal, because we are not trained to write business proposal. And that is why some things that a business person will begin to say, at this stage, can you do this? A scientist is not saying it. Most of the time, until recently, the scientists just want to publish and say, I'm feel cool. But what happened after? Nobody knows. Otherwise, we should ask ourselves, most of the papers that have been published in Nature, how many have we benefit from in Nature? It's only in paper. And when the business people comes in, they think change differently. Even from the way we are looking at it, there are some questions that I've started in the last 2 years. I've been sitting down with them, and you begin to sometimes you look so stupid, because by the time they start asking you some question, from the scientific point of view, we are not looking at that. But they are not looking at it and say, for this material to become commercialized, we need this, we need this. They are even asking you what's the cost. Have you done the total cost? So what are they going to gain? So those are the things that we need to sit down, and then we need to be learning about how to take our material from the lab to the commercialization.
Thank you very much, Prof. Our last question. Whilst we are waiting for our last question, I'll use the opportunity introduce and then acknowledge some of our special guests who are with us. We have Professor Jones Louisata, Director for Quality and Academic Planning. Prof, if you are here, please give us a wave. We also have Professor Edward Owusu, Director for Grants, Research and Development. We also have Professor Zoe Bama, the Dean for Faculty of Government and Applied Arts. We also have Professor Kwame Odro Amwaku, Dean of Business and Management Studies. We have Professor Ernest Kumi, Dean of Students, also here. And then teachers from Sunyani Senior High School, we acknowledge your presence. Students, we also thank you very much for coming. Department heads, unit heads, all staff of STU, thank you very much for coming. We also have Professor Samuel Yafidi, Faculty of Engineering, also with us here. And then our freshers who are also part of us, thank you very much for coming. Before Prof takes his seat, let's give him a round of applause, please. At this point, I will invite the Director of Research, Grant and Development to do us the honor, present a citation to our special guest speaker.
Wow, this is a beautiful citation. Let me read it before we present it to our guest. Citation in honor of Professor Samuel Oluwatobi Oluwafemi. Forgive me if I didn't pronounce it well. In recognition of your distinguished contribution to advancing knowledge in organic chemistry and nanotechnology, and your commitment to sustainable development through cutting-edge research and innovation, Sunyani Technical University extends its deepest appreciation. Your gracious acceptance to deliver the public lecture on the wonder of the nano world in the micro world, synthesis and application of nanodots for sustainable life has enriched the academic community of Sunyani Technical University and inspired researchers and students across multiple disciplines. This citation is presented in recognition of your invaluable contribution to the advancement of science and education. Congratulations, Professor. We cherish you so much.
Thank you very much, Prof. I'll now invite the chairman of this event, Professor Zoya, to deliver his closing remarks. Let's give it up for him.
Thank you once again, and I will, sorry. I'll request another big round of applause for our speaker. When I saw the topic first, the first time it was posted on our platforms, I really didn't understand what this was all about. But having sat through the presentation, I think it's become much, much easier, and we can easily connect to whatever was advertised. There are some few takeaways or highlights of the presentation that I want us to take note of. Starting with the topic. What the word I saw was the wonder. That was one of the key words. And from the presentation, I think there are various wonders that happens in the micro world, the world that we cannot see, particularly through the use of nanotechnology. And I say that, is it not a wonder that sometime to come, we can sit at home and get cancer cured without going to the hospital, and particularly taking through sophisticated technology? Is it also a wonder that, is it also not a wonder that water could eventually be purified by just using a simple apparatus or substance at home without the sophistication of heavy equipment and processes? It's also a wonder that we could get our food purified. Somebody talked of the danger of galamsey and mining. We are told time and again that we have most of our vegetables and then fishes in our water bodies polluted or contaminated with heavy metals. And from what he has said, it means we could one day possibly sit at home, and by just piercing acceptance, we can get all those things out to make them, consumable. And one of the wonders that I've also seen, that all these things are possible in Africa, and particularly led by, African scientists. I mean, particularly our brother from Nigeria. So everything is possible. I have also taken note of all the researches he has shared. We have always been encouraged to pursue applied research. Most of all that he has shared are solution-oriented, research, not just giving us idea about problems, but undertaking research that will address problems pertinent, in our society. And I've seen that most of them are in top journals, as most of my colleague academics here will see, that if we really pursue research that is significant and can solve problems in society, we stand a greater chance of being, getting published in those high-end journals. And one thing I want us to take note, on a lighter note, particularly our staff and students at the ACR department. He's in Nigeria, and there has been this long-standing contention between Nigeria and Ghana. Apart from football, it is jollof. And I'm hoping that with the knowledge shared in nanotechnology, we will get to a point where one day Ghanaians will use that technology to come up with more sumptuous jollof, and jollof that can last longer than the Nigerians, so we'll pick them to it. Yes. So, it was full of a lot of takeaways, and these are just a few of them. So, once again, thank you very much, Professor, for your insightful presentation. I know everybody will go out here highly knowledgeable about nanotechnology, nano dots, and then quantum dots. Thank you very much. And I know there will be vote of thanks, so I will not go into thanking everybody, but particularly the staff, students, and then the general public. We thank you very much for your cooperation and then participation in this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Prof, Director for Research, Grant, please, can we take the picture again of you presenting the citation to Prof? We want to take another picture. I want to use it for a very nice publicity, so we want another picture of you presenting the citation to Prof. All right, thank you very much. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we shall now take our final remarks from our Vice Chancellor of Sunyani Technical University. Although he's unable to join us physically, his commitment to this program is very high. So he's going to join us virtually. Mr. Asemefia, if you are ready, please. We are ready for VC.
Okay, good afternoon to you all. Can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you.
Piaru, can you hear me from the auditorium? Hello, Seth. Registrar, you are online. You seem to be hearing me, but I don't think they can
normally
hear us.
the microphone, if they put it, I think they can hear you. I don't know, but
I'm not hearing from Seth.
I think
Seth, PRO,
so VC's remarks will be shared on our platform to all of us, but I know he's 100% committed today. Oh, I learned he's online. He's joining us briefly.